on, and if anybody else joins, we'll go from there. All right, so thanks everybody for joining this month's Azure and M365 user group for the Michigan group. And I'm Dwayne Natwick. I also have Elizabeth McAndrew Benavides on, and we are both calling from Michigan this month. Elizabeth is visiting Michigan, being from Michigan originally, but visiting from the DC area. So we got a couple Michigan participants and others from around the world. So including our guest speakers this month. But let's just review our the group mission that we have, which is have an inclusive learning environment and provide our content from the global community members on a monthly basis and expand knowledge for users in Michigan, US, and around the world. And everyone's welcome to share in the sessions, provide sessions, provide content for sessions. I welcome it. So if you want to reach out to me or Elizabeth, if you have a topic you want to present in a later meeting, feel free. But no sales pitches, please. This is information and technical and information about Azure or Microsoft 365. And all of our sessions are recorded and archived on the YouTube channel. So let's talk about today's presenters. I'm not going to go through the big list of these guys because they are, but one thing you can see on here is they are very active in the community. Tim Hermie is a Microsoft MVP and an MCT and a modern workplace architect. And then WIM Matthyssen, he is also an MVP and a cloud architect and an MCT. So, and both are very active with the Belgian community as well with their MC2MC user group. And we'll mention that. I have a slide later for upcoming events, and we'll plug that for you too, guys. So with that, I will turn it over to WIM. And if you guys want to give any more background on yourself that I didn't hit on, feel free.
Okay, let me first share my screen. I think it's up.
Yep, we got it.
Let me take my slide deck. Okay, there it is, I think. So
Yes, sir.
Hello, everyone. And thank you for joining Tim and myself in our session titled Azure Identity Management, No PIM without WIM and TIM. I think with the title, the topic of the session will be clear. But first of all, Tim and myself also want to thank Dwayne and Elizabeth and the other members of the Michigan Azure and Microsoft 365 user group for the opportunity to deliver this talk. As an introduction, like Dwayne already said, I'm Matthyssen. I live in Belgium and I work as a cloud architect at a company called Synergics. In my job, I'm completely focused on Azure and all the related Azure hybrid services. As a Microsoft certified trainer, I also deliver all kinds of Azure related trainings and workshops. And since July of this year, I'm awarded as a Microsoft Azure MVP, which was a real honor to me. Next to that, I'm also a founding board member of a Belgian user group called MC2MC, like Dwayne also mentioned, which stands for Microsoft Cloud and Client Management Community. And we focus on Azure and the complete Microsoft 365 stack. Like most IT professionals these days, I'm also on Twitter and LinkedIn. So if you ever want to reach out, just ask a question or just want to say hi, you can always contact me through my Twitter handle or LinkedIn. I also have my own blog, https://wmatthyssen.com, where I blog a lot about my daily experience with Azure and other Microsoft technologies. So that's me in a nutshell, and I will now let Tim introduce himself.
Good evening and good morning for some people. My name is Tim Hermie. I'm a senior modern workplace architect at Synergics, the same company as WIM is working. Also MCT, Microsoft MVP in the enterprise mobility category since May, founding board member of the MC2MC. We have monthly events at the moment. You can follow me with my Twitter hashtag @_cloudboy. I'm a frequent blogger at cloudboy.be. With a big focus on Intune and Windows Virtual Desktop. All right.
So on the agenda today, first of all, we will explain why identity is a new security perimeter and what identity governance is. Then we will take a look at what PIM is and how you can deploy and configure it. We also take a look on how you can activate and manage roles and how to audit and troubleshoot PIM. At the end of the session, we will also look at the future roadmap, what's ahead for PIM, which new features will be added, and so on and so on. And we will go through some key takeaways where we will focus on the things we really should remember about this session. And totally at the end, we probably still have some time for a Q&A where we love to answer all your questions. So let us first take a look why identity is a new security perimeter. So Tim, can you tell us why securing your identities is really important in this modern hybrid cloud world?
Yeah, we've come a long way, and in the old days, everything was locked down. We had the fish tank principle, so everyone was in his secured perimeter. Everyone went to work to be safe. Everything was after firewalls. But with everything evolving in the cloud landscape, we're moving to a zero-touch network perimeter, where it is important that we protect our identities in the first phase, our devices in a second phase, and our data in a later phase. So it's another look on how to protect our data and our identities. Why is identity important? That's the first step, and it's really easy. Well, 81% of the breaches are caused by credential theft, by phishing. Hackers can get the credentials of our employees and get inside the systems like that. 37% of the passwords are duplicates. And what do I mean by this? That for all our different accounts, our work account, our Gmail account, our private account, a lot of people are using the same passwords. We who are working in IT are, of course, using different passwords. But if, for example, I'm asking my mom, how many different passwords do you have for all your different accounts? She's just going to tell me that she has one password for all her accounts. So that's something that's not safe. Another thing is a shadow IT. 80% of employees are using non-approved apps for work. Is that an issue? You can ask yourself, is it an issue that they are running a Dropbox on their computer? In fact, it's not an issue that the Dropbox is running, but we don't have any control on what data they are putting in there or what corporate data they are putting in there. So we also have to have something to control that. Can you go to the next slide, Wim?
Yep.
So here you can see a little bit of examples of identity breaches, the phishing accounts, how they can get access to your accounts. There are some sites that you can look through. Have I been bound to see if your account has been compromised? Microsoft technology also uses a database. If your account has been compromised somewhere, they can know it, and you can work with risk detection. So yeah, next slide, please, Wim. The cost of downtime, also something that's very important. If they get in, if they are in a further stadia, that they get access to your environment, and they can take control over some things. It has a really big impact if they can put it down. It has an impact on your business, of course, an impact on your brand. It's something that you want. Your brand has to be good, and it can also have an impact on your IT career if you are the person who's managing security at that time. So it's really important. That's a few examples why identity is really important and why we have to strengthen the security there. So how can we do that? And again, it's also easy. We have to protect at the front door. The second step, we want to simplify access to devices and apps, and we have to safeguard our credentials. So how can we do that? With implementing MFA in the first phase, multi-factor authentication. So an extra form of authentication is required before we are getting access to corporate resources. In the next phase, after implementing MFA, we can simplify access to devices and apps by going passwordless, for example. We can implement MFA in the first phase. It's a bit tricky because it mostly has a negative tone with employees. MFA is an extra step that they have to do. They have to push on approve or sometimes type over a code. But if you implement it correctly, it doesn't have much impact on the end user, and you can simplify their life by giving them more advantages, like giving them the ability to use passwordless authentication so that they can access their Office, their mail, their Word data without even having to enter a password anymore. Yeah. Just a side for clarification, if we're talking about Microsoft Azure Active Directory, we're not talking about Active Directory domain services. Azure Active Directory, it's not a replacement also of Active Directory domain services. It's a complement for the cloud. So this is a slide for clarification that it's something different. You can't really look at it at two things being the same. They complement each other and they can work closely together.
So if we then look at identity governance, which is a subcategory of identity and access management, which will provide organizations with better visibility to identities and access privileges, and also better controls to detect and prevent inappropriate access. Today, we will focus on the privilege roles. And for this, you can take some steps to getting better control of those account identities. Like limiting the number of global administrators, provision emergency accounts, use the least privileged access principle model when granting access to specific resources. And you can also combine MFA, like Tim already said, with role-based access control in the back integrated with Azure AD Privileged Identity Management, or PIM. We will dig a little deeper in those topics in the next screen. Sorry, that's the wrong one. So if we look at identity governance, first of all, like I already mentioned, you should limit the amount of global administrators, because users with a global admin role have access to all administrative features in your complete Azure Active Directory. And by figure of speech, they have the keys of the kingdom. So as a best practice, it's best to minimize the number of those global admins to 2, maximum 4 people in the organization. One of the other things you can do to better protect your account's identities is enabling multi-factor authentication, or MFA, like Tim also already mentioned. These days, you can enable MFA for free, and you will enable it to ensure that all your accounts will less likely be compromised, because using passwords only these days, will definitely not meet the high security needs. With the use of MFA, you will immediately increase your account security, and this by requiring multiple forms of verification to prove a user's identity whenever he signs into any application he uses. Those authentication methods include something you know, something you have, and something you are. So for example, you can use a username with a password. You log into the Azure portal, type in your username, type in your password, and then you can combine it with, for example, the Microsoft Authenticator app on your mobile phone. So when you typed in your username and password, you will be redirected. You get a message on your Authenticator app. You sign in, even with your finger scan or something. You allow it, and then you have access to your Azure portal. But what if MFA malfunctions and you're not able to log in, for example, to the Azure portal, or that you're completely locked out of your Azure ID organization because you can't sign in anymore with your administrative accounts? To solve this, you can create 2 or maximum 3 emergency access, or like they say, break glass accounts. These accounts should be cloud-only accounts that use the onmicrosoft.com domain, and these accounts should not be federated or synchronized from any on-premises environment. You should also make them and give them the global administrator role assignment permanently, and you should exclude them from any from MFA or any conditional access policy you have. It's also best to use a service admin account, so you don't associate them with any individual user in the organization. And you should definitely not call them emergency or break the glass admin, because if then an attacker gets into your Azure AD, it's really easy for him to guess which one are your break glass accounts. You should also use a long and a complex password, at least 16 characters long. But in our opinion, it's better to go for a maximum of 128 randomly generated characters. You need to store this password in a good password manager, or you can print it out, cut it in two, and save it in two safes or something. And only 3 people should be aware where their passwords are located, or should know about these passwords. And a final thing to mention is that you definitely need to monitor those accounts, which you can do that with, for example, Azure AD Audit or MCAS. And you need to do that monitoring, especially for signing or logins, because those accounts are not protected with MFA. And when somebody tries to use them, a hacker or something, you should be aware that someone is trying to use that specific account. An important thing to combine with PIM is to know what RBAC is. So let us take a look at role-based access control, or RBAC. RBAC is an important.
Hey, Wim. Quick question from Gregor. Does Azure AD provide a self-service portal for users in the organization?
Tim, I think it does.
Yeah, it does. It does. You have the myapps.microsoft.com, and in there you can go to your profile. You can edit your security settings. It does have a sort of self-service portal. Yeah, they can reset their own password if they want. If password write-back is enabled, it has some requirements, of course, but it has a self-service portal in some sorts. Yeah.
And you can create your own security questions and everything like that in there as well, correct?
I'm not sure about that. I know that they can change their security info. Yeah, they can change their security questions there. Yeah. Right. They can do a lot of things. You can open it like you want it. Yeah, but correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me go back. RBAC is an important part of your identity and access governance strategy. It will really help you to keep control on who has access to your Azure resources, what they can do with them, and what areas they have access to. Currently, there are around 70 plus built-in roles you can use, but you can also configure your own custom rules. So you can take a built-in rule, copy it, and then adjust it to whatever rules you want to implement, or roles or features you want to add. You should always use the least privileged access model. So give a user the minimum access they need to fulfill their tasks. So there's a slightly difference between the Azure admin roles, like, for example, the global admin, which can be used to manage everything in your complete Azure AD tenant, even to the root tenant group, for example, where RBAC rules can only be used for a specific scope, which can be a management group, a subscription, a resource group, or a specific resource in your environment. So how does RBAC works? First of all, you define a security principle. This is an object that can represent a user, a group, a service principle, which is used by applications to access a resource, and even a managed identity, which is an identity in Azure AD that's automatically managed by Azure and mostly used whenever someone starts developing applications in Azure. Then secondly, you define that role. You want to specify the permissions you want to grant. And last but not least, you define the scope, which, like I already said, can be a management group, a subscription, a resource group, or any kind of resource in your Azure environment. If you look at some examples of when you might want to use RBAC, for example, to allow one user to manage VMs in a subscription and another one to manage the virtual networks. Another example is to allow a database administrator to manage all Microsoft SQL Server databases in a subscription. Like you can see on the screenshot, depending on the role a user has, the capability to do more or less things. So for example, if you're just a reader, you can just look at everything, but you can't change anything. If you're already a contributor, you can change everything, but you can't allow access. You can't give someone others allowed access to that specific resource. And if you're the owner, yeah, you can do almost everything. Built-in roles that are used mostly for specific reasons are those reader, operator, and contributor roles. And you can take a look at them for example, in this example, for the Azure Backup Recovery Services fault. But maybe it's best that I show this in a demo. So let me open. You're seeing my screen, Dwayne, my Azure portal at the moment. So over here, I have a recovery services fault. If I click on that one and I go to access control, I already granted someone extra rights. So if I click on roles, oh, sorry. It's not doing it. It's the wrong group. Let me check it. I need my other resource group, I think. It's this one. So if I go to access control again, click on roles. It's loading. It's taking its time. Still not there. Role assignments. For example, you see Jeff Peters, and he has the RBAC role backup reader. So if you log on to the Azure portal with that specific user, and we go to the resource group. Oh, let me open all resources. That's maybe easier. We go to that specific resource recovery service fault. You open the backup items, for example, click on Azure Virtual Machines. You can see some VMs have a backup. If I want to stop a backup and just stop it, you can see I'm not allowed to do so. So I can only see all backups, but I can't change anything. Let me go back to my other portal. So if you want to apply a specific role, let us say on the network resource group, so in there, they're all network related resources. I can add a role assignment. You can select a role. For networking, this can be network contributor, for example. You select a specific user. Let me choose this one again. You click on save. The role will be assigned, and afterwards that specific user can manage those network settings. Another thing, if you want to know which users are the global admin in your environment, you can go to your Azure Active Directory, go to roles and administrators, just type in global, click on the global administrators. You can see at the moment I have 2 global admins in my environment. For example, if you want to enable MFA in an easy way these days, you once again go to Azure Active Directory, click on properties, and at the bottom you have manage security defaults. When you set those to yes, there are standard enabled security defaults, and one of those features is that MFA is enabled. So that's an easy way to enable it for your users. So I think with that, we can go back to the slides. Let me share the screen again. So, and I think, Tim, you can take over now.
Quick question. What are the differences between owner and global administrator?
An owner is an RBAC role. So it's applied on Azure resources, and a global admin, it's at your tenant level. So it's a higher level. It's the king of the castle, for example. It's also the guy who creates a subscription, for example, and he can not only manage all Azure resources and do whatever he wants to do. He has also rights on the Azure tenant, AD tenant itself. It's a separated role. It's an Azure AD role. It's not really an RBAC role. So an owner in Azure, if you create a resource, you're probably going to be the owner of that specific resource. And you can give people owner rights for specific resources in Azure, and then they can do anything they want. They can read them, they can change them, but they can also give that specific other RBAC rights to other people. So
probably a good best practice to limit your global administrators, which
max
and administrators in general, which segues into Tim's PIM, right?
I never allow people to have owner rights on Azure resources. I always, if they really need to do tasks, the best role to use is a contributor role. So every Azure resource has a contributor role. Like you could see, you have the Azure Backup contributor role, you have the network contributor role, and then, for example, a network engineer can then work on every Azure-related networking resources, for example. You can grant them on subscription level, or you can grant them on a resource group level. So try to just give people enough rights to do only the things they really need to do and nothing else. That's the thing you should keep in mind.
Perfect. Thank you.
So what is Azure AD Privileged Identity Management, or PIM? And it's a tool that we can use to keep our roles in control. So what we want is work in the principle of least principal access. So we want to keep our global admins under control. Like we just said, we don't want to have 10 global admins. We want to have one global admin. And we also want our people working in IT to only have a role when they need to do certain actions. So what is PIM? It's a service that enables us to manage, control, and monitor access to important resources in our organization. And those resources include, of course, Azure AD, Azure, Office 365, and Microsoft Intune. Also, nice to know is, since last month, PIM is also built in the endpoint console, so you don't have to go to the Azure portal anymore if you're more working with Intune than Azure. So why should we use PIM? First of all, to manage risk, we want to work with the least privilege access principle, just-in-time access, so our employees can access or ask their role when they need it, and they will have it for a certain amount of time. So it's also time-bound. What's another advantage of using PIM? We address compliance and governance, especially identity governance, and we can reduce costs also. Next slide, Wim. So what does PIM do? Just-in-time privileged access, but I'm going to demo it also later on. It's time-bound or time-bound, so we can say you can ask for a global admin role, but you can only have it 1 hour. For an Intune admin role, we can give it for a day, for example. We can ask for approval for certain roles. So in my setup, I have certain roles that they can activate themselves. That they activate themselves. They don't need approval, but like the God role or the global admin role, it requires approval from another global admin. It also uses multi-factor authentication. Even if you log in and MFA is not enabled, and your user logs in and he activates a role, he will have to go through the process of enrolling an MFA, and it will trigger there. You'll also see that in my demo. They have to put in justification. Why do they need that role at this time? What are they going to do? You can link it with the ticketing system that they can put in a ticket number also, so you have sort of tracking. You can do access reviews, and there is a really good audit history for internal or external audit. And how does it work? And it's in phases. We have the plan phase, the assign phase, the activate phase, the approve phase if you set it up, and the audit phase. First, we're going to plan. We're going to determine the users and roles that will be managed by PIM, and we're going to assign them. There's a second phase. We're going to determine the users that are eligible for a global admin role or eligible for an Intune admin role. So when they need it, they can activate it. This is all done with the PIM administrator is doing the first two things. The end user himself, the PIM user, can activate his role himself. Like I said, we can put some approval on it or not. So that if there's approval on it, the PIM approver will get a mail. He'll have to approve the request, and the PIM administrator can also audit. So we can also see what roles are being activated. You also get a mail if a role gets activated. The end user gets a mail. The PIM administrator gets a mail. So it's really good it gets logged really good, and the control over the system is also really nice. So what's the workflow? An admin user needs to activate privileges to perform a task. Let's say he has to do some configuration in Intune. So he goes to his Privileged Identity Manager blade. He will activate his Intune role. MFA will be enforced, like I said. Even if he is logged in without MFA, he will get a pop-up then. The PIM admin can define any user to have permanent or eligible rights. So what is the difference there? A permanent role is a role that you will always have. An eligible role is one that you can activate yourself, so that you can activate. Privileges are time-bound. You can choose the time yourself, like a global admin role. You can say you can have it for 1 hour. An Intune administrator role you can have for 8 hours. After the time has passed, the role will be stripped down again from the user. And again, we have detailed reporting and auditing.
So, of course, to use PIM, a directory must have a valid license. This can be an Azure AD Premium P2 license, an EMS E5 license, a Microsoft 365 Education A5 license, or a Microsoft 365 Enterprise E5 license. As an example, when your company has 50 administrators, of which 42 are managed through PIM, and 5 of those users can approve activations, and another 6 are reviewers, and also no part of the administrator roles managed by PIM, then you will need 42 licenses, plus 5 for the approvers and 6 for the reviewers. So a total of 53 licenses will be required in this case. You should also keep in mind that when a license, like your Azure AD Premium P2 license or any other or another trial license, for example, expires, PIM features will no longer be available in your directory. So permanent role assignments to Azure AD roles will be unaffected, but the PIM service will no longer be available to activate, manage, or perform access reviews in any way. And also all your PIM configuration settings you set up will be removed. So I think, Tim, how to deploy and configure PIM. So the global administrator, that user again, is the first user who enables PIM, will get write access, and is also assigned to security administrator and privileged role administrator role. You should, once again, always ensure that there are at least 2 of those privileged role administrators, because all other global administrators and all other security administrators and security readers will only have read-only access by default. So that first global admin needs to assign that privileged role administrator role also to at least one other global admin. So there are a lot of configuration settings, like Tim said, you can set for activation, assignments, and notifications. Just keep in mind that these settings can be different for Azure AD roles and Azure resources, but Tim will show this all in a demo. So Tim, go ahead, I will say.
Yes, I'll hijack the screen. Let me see. Okay, I'm just gonna ping in on the question from Greg with the self-service portal. Just real quick, if you go to my account at Microsoft.com, there are some self-service actions here, like they can change their password. Password write-back has to be enabled though, to get synced back to your on-premise DC. And the security info, I just wanted to show this also. Here you can add security methods or delete them and edit them also. So there is some sort of self-service portal in there, so you can check it out there. Now about PIM. How can we access PIM in an administrator's view? We go to portal@azure.com, Azure AD Privileged Identity Management. There used to be a quick start guide when you set it up the first time. I've spinned a new tenant today to show that quick start guide, but they put it out, so I won't be able to show it. But I can show you how it can be managed. So the tasks that you are seeing here is my roles. What roles am I eligible on? I'm going to show that in a later demo. the requests. So I'm a PIM admin. If a request comes in from a user who needs a global admin role, it will be here and I can approve it here. You can review the access here. But what I want to show now is the roles. So that's the first step is we're going to define what roles we're going to manage with PIM. So if you look at my setup, and I'll show the global admin, you see that I have one active assignment and it's on my user. So I'm always assigned with the global administrator role. But if I look at eligible assignments, you see I have a few users here who can access the role, so who can activate it themselves. In the settings here, you can specify a lot of things. So let's go over them. You can set your activation maximum duration. So for my global admin, I've put that on 1 hour because I don't want people to have that role for a really, really long time. I require justification. So they're going to have to put in a reason why do they need that role. I'm also requiring a ticket number. So if they want a role, they're going to have to put in a ticket number. So we have a trace back in our ticketing system. MFA is required, but it should always be on this. It requires approval to activate. So I don't want my end users or my IT people to activate it themselves. I still want for my global admin role that I can see who wants it and I can activate myself or I can prove it myself. Let's check another role then. The Intune administrator role. I have no active assignments and I have one person who is eligible for it. So one person who can activate it. And I'll show it, the demo in the end users view also later on. If you see here in the role settings, I've put this on 8 hours because an Intune admin role, it's something that they can have for a longer time. They can't do much wrong with it. And I can also imagine that if you are going to dive in there, that it will take longer than an hour. Do I require a justification? Yeah, I still want them to give me a justification on why do you need that role. I don't require any ticket info on this. And I also don't require approval. And that's what I'm going to show you later in the demo, the two different scenarios. The one with no approval will activate itself. So there's no interaction from any other person needed. It goes automatically. And after 8 hours, the role will get stripped away automatically. If John Doe, my test user, wants to activate the global admin role, it does need approval, so it does need interaction from my side. I'm going to have to approve it, but it will, of course, get stripped away also after 1 hour. Something new here that I wanted to show is the privilege access groups. It's in preview. If you want to work with that, you can now couple roles on groups. If you want your group to be in here, I'm going to show you because it's a new setting that you have to activate in your groups. So if you create a new group in Azure AD, and I'll just show you here, you can see it here already. Azure AD roles can be assigned to the group. So if you put this on yes, you can use it with PIM. If you want to activate it on an existing group, I'll just take a random group. But it's not a good one. I need a user group. Let's take this one. I thought, put it on. It was, I'm not sure anymore where it was. Nope, I'm not going to be able to show it. I think you have to create new groups, but I'm not sure. I'm going to look it up after that and provide some feedback on that. But if you want to use your groups in the preview, you should put on that option. But let's go back to here. Yeah, the rest is for my later demo. So you can go back to the slides, Wim.
Okay. Let me share the screen again. Okay. So activation and managing roles. That's one for you, I think, Tim.
Yes, but 1 second. Yes, PIM scope. So we can assign users to a role, and users must elevate to use the privileges granted by the role. We can, of course, use all roles that are built in, the global admin role, the exchange administrator, security administrator. We can also work with custom roles. That's also good to know. The PIM scope also goes to Azure resources. So we can also use the built-in RBAC roles like owner, user access administrator, contributor, as well as custom RBAC roles. Roles you cannot manage with PIM. The account administrator, service administrator, and co-administrator, and Office 365 admin roles. No support for specific roles within Exchange RBAC or SharePoint RBAC. Currently, there's also an issue when eligible users ask for the SharePoint admin role, the device admin role, and any other roles trying to access Microsoft Security and Compliance Center. There might be a delay on it. And I've also experienced a slight delay sometimes out of these roles, but it shouldn't be longer than a few minutes. These roles here that we're saying here can have a delay of a few hours, and I've experienced that also in a real life with a customer. So it's an issue, and I hope they will fix that soon.
So there are a lot of tasks you can perform to manage all your Azure AD roles. Of course, you first need to assign a role, like Tim already said. You can do this if you have the privileged role administrator role, and then you can make a user eligible for a specific resource role. With this role, you can also configure other role settings. Then, for example, if you have the delegated approver role, you can also approve or deny requests. And finally, you can also configure any kind of alerts so that when there's a suspicious or unsafe activity in your Azure AD organization, an alert is triggered, and then the required people get notified. So, and then back to the demo, I think, Tim.
Yes, let's show it in the end, in the view of the end user. So someone who is asking for a role or wants it to activate. So I'm going to sign in with my test user, John Doe. You see, I don't get any MFA prompt now, so it's not enabled for this user. He is registered though, but just FYI. And if you go in here, and let's just open Azure Active Directory. Let's look for my user. There, I'm just global reader at the moment. So all I can do now is I can see everything in Azure AD, but I can't change or change anything or change settings. Let's say I have to do some Intune administration today. So I'm going to Azure AD Privileged Identity Management. Tasks are the tasks I can have, so I can check my roles. Which roles am I eligible for? And I'm going to do some Intune administration today, so I can activate it here. I've already showed in the previous demo that I don't need any interaction or approval for this. So I can, first step here is you can see additional verification required. This, like I said, MFA is enforced with PIM. So even though I didn't have to do an MFA prompt when logging into the Azure AD portal, when I'm going to activate this role, I'm going to have to verify it with multi-factor authentication. There. I can have given a reason, so I'm doing Intune administration today. 8 hours is the maximum hours I've put in my settings. Let's say I'm going to do 2 hours of work. I can activate it. And you can see that it's 3 stages. It's processing our request, activating the role. Then it's validating that the activation is successful. And stage 3, it will say activation completed successfully. Up till a month ago, I think a month or a month and a half ago, we had to log out of the portal and log in again for the roles to be active. We don't have to do that anymore. So Microsoft took care of that problem. There, so I should have the Intune admin role, and we can check it. If I go to the endpoint blade, I have access, so it's correct, it's activated. I can do my work, I can do everything I want here, and the end user can do what he has to do, or the IT employee. Let's say that I have another scenario that I have to do some other stuff, and I need the global administrator role, so I'm going to activate this one. I can only have it for 1 hour. I need additional verification again, so I'm going to have to do the MFA prompt again. No, it paused. It's still active. I'm going to use it for 1 hour, the ticketing system. I need a number. You put the number in there. I click on activate. You can see your request is pending for approval. So that was also in my previous demo. The Intune administrator role, they could access or activate themselves. The global administrator role, I still want some approval. I want to see who is asking for it and why are they needing it. So if I go back here, I'm logged in with my user. I'm going to Azure AD Privileged Identity Management, approve requests. And I can see here that John Doe is asking for a global admin role with the reason and the ticket number. So normally I could go to my ticketing system now, open the ticket number, see what the issue is, and then say, okay, you can have it, or you really don't need that role. You can get another role and fix it like that. I'm going to approve it now. Confirm. Voila. And let's go here. My requests. That should be okay. Now let's check if it's all right now. There, and you can see that I have the global administrator role assigned, and it will end in one hour. So I can do what I have to do, and in 1 hour, the global administrator role will get stripped away also. Okay, back to you, Wim.
Okay, let me share the screen again and the slides. So, Tim, here you are.
Auditing and troubleshooting. Also good to know that there are some built-in auditing tools in PIM, so you can see the audit history, see the user assignments and the activations for a given period. And access reviews, we can also use access reviews to evaluate guest user access, evaluate employee access to applications and group memberships, collect access reviews. Yeah, that's about it. Troubleshooting PIM. If you are denied access to Azure resources, problem. So as an active owner or user access administrator for an Azure resource, you are able to see your resource inside PIM, but you cannot perform any actions. The cause of this can happen when the user access administrator role for the PIM service principal was accidentally removed from the Azure subscription. And how can we resolve this? Assign the user access administrator role to the privileged identity management service principal name, ms-pim, at the Azure subscription level. And I'll show you a few other things real quick. Let me take over again. I'm not going to be able to show a lot of audit because my demo environment is not that big, but let's go to PIM again. There. So you have my audit history. You can see what I did, what happened in the back, resolved an alert. I've added the role. And the access reviews. But I don't think there's going to be anything in here. No, so it can be shown that. Alerts is a nice one to show also. There's also a few alerts that get spawned automatically. If you click on scan, it will check if it's still up to date or give you new alerts. So we can see here potential stale accounts in a privileged role. So that means that I have a lot of accounts in my tenant that aren't using their roles. And what is nice here is that you can fix it here. So if you click on those people that you don't want to have that role anymore, you just click on them. There, I'm gonna fix it. What's another alert? And administrators that aren't using their privileged role. So I have one user in my tenant, Jasper, who I've gave eligibility to global admin, but he never activated it. So I can fix this also. If you never activated it in the last 3 months, are you ever going to activate it? Probably not. So if I fix it here, we will take that role away from him. So that was my last demo for today.
So let me take over again. So to close off, what's on the future roadmap? Microsoft is working on the ability to manage those privileged access groups, which already mentioned by Tim. It's already in preview, so you can already start using it. They're also working on the integration with the endpoint portal. I believe, Tim, this is also in preview at the moment. And they're also looking into integration of PIM with Azure Bastion. That's an Azure PaaS service that will give you a secure connection to your VM resources in Azure running. So if you look at the key takeaways, the things you should really remember about our session, identity is there, and identity is really the new security perimeter. So protect all your identities. Create your break glass accounts. Whenever you're not able or MFA is not working anymore, you can still access your environment and do the necessary things you need to do. Keep your privileged users under control with PIM. I think, yeah, half of our session was about PIM, so I hope everybody learned something about that. Always take use of the least privilege principle. So just give people just the rights they need to do to fulfill their job. And if you start off from clean, just like you need to create an Azure governance plan, also make an identity governance plan where everything is set in on paper. And whenever there's a problem or you need to fix, you can look at that. So write everything down in a good plan. So with that, we think we still have some time for a Q&A. And otherwise, I think this presentation will self-destruct in 10 seconds. So go ahead if you want.
Very nice. Thank you, guys. I do have a few things as well to cover in terms of some upcoming events and things. But if anybody does have any questions, I'll pause while I'm going to share my screen.
They can always ask through Twitter also at Dwayne, or LinkedIn, whatever.
Ask through Twitter, LinkedIn,
Twitter handles are there. So if you have a question, just shout.
So upcoming dates and presentations for our monthly meeting. Still looking if anybody wants to guest present. I still have September open. Otherwise, I'll create a topic and I will present. In October we have WIM back. He mentioned Azure Bastion. Maybe they'll have the preview for PIM with Azure Bastion ready by then to talk about the Bastion host, which is a great way, like Wim said, to manage in a secure environment rather than utilizing a operating system such as a jump box to get into a management environment. And then I have Victor Rodriguez in November scheduled to talk about IoT Central and Power BI, which is a very cool topic that is big in the Azure environment now, is how we're utilizing IoT devices and presenting streaming data through Power BI. So looking forward to those and some other events coming up. I think I got WIM and TIM both roped into my Azure Back to School, which starts in just a couple weeks. We'll have videos and we'll have focus videos and or blog articles on different Azure topics throughout the week of December with guest speakers from around the world. As Tim and Wim both mentioned, they are board members on the MC2MC user group in Belgium, and they have a set of events, including you have one next week, I believe, as well, right? A week from today, is it?
Yep.
Yep. So
yeah, that's true. Yep.
Yep. So great with that, and I believe I'm speaking in the September event. So look forward to the quid pro quo that you guys have been giving me with our user group. So I've been doing a YouTube series weekly at my YouTube channel on network services. I felt that there has been a gap around some specific content around the networking services in Azure. So I've been kind of hitting each of the network services as a weekly little 10 to 15 minute talk video that I've been putting in to my YouTube channel and created a playlist on that. So feel free to visit that, and I'll share this slide deck out so everybody gets the links that I'm presenting here as well. Elizabeth, are you back on and want to talk about the Obsagility virtual conference that we have coming up in October? So she was just on, but we may have lost her. Myself and Elizabeth work for a learning partner, Obsagility, and we are hosting a 3-day free conference in October it's going to be on, I think there's a DevOps day, there's a 365 day, and there's an infrastructure day. So there's a link here. I'll actually put that one in the chat if you want to register. So great event. Like I said, free event, 3-day virtual conference, which would be really cool. And then I wanted to also mention the Cloud Lunch and Learn sessions that Hugo Barona, he puts on regularly. And I just finished a session on the Azure Architecture Expert. I think he's got one going on right now on IoT, and some just really good sessions that he's putting together as a series of sessions around different technologies. And I believe I'll be doing one for Azure fundamentals here in the next month or two as well. So look forward to doing that. Do you guys want to say anything real quick on the MC2MC events? I'll let you give a plug real quick.
Yeah, so we have one next week. So we're all talking ourselves. So we have 4 sessions, 2 focused on Azure, and 2 focused on Microsoft 365. So it's completely free. So whoever is interested can still, the link is over there, can register, and we hope to all see you there all virtually, I think.
Yeah, and later on the year we have 2 special events. We'll have a Microsoft Security Night with some top-notch Microsoft speakers, and we'll also have a Women in Tech Night, but more info on our site. All right. Great.
And last thing, thank everybody for joining today. You can I do have the website for the user group launched, and it's on the slide, as well as a Twitter handle specifically for the user group, as well as you can get information off of my blog, captainhyperscaler.com, or reach out to myself or Elizabeth at our Twitter handles about anything that has to do with the user group. So I want to thank everybody. I'll pause for a moment if there's any last questions for Wim and Tim. Oh, no problem. And yeah, I appreciate you guys stepping up, and I might have to make you guys honorary board members, being that you've volunteered for so many sessions right off the bat as I started this user group. So I really appreciate you guys helping me get off the ground here with this user group, giving some great content. So I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, so we'll close out this meeting. And thanks a lot. And everybody have a great rest of your day wherever you are. Some of you, I think, are in the afternoon and on the back end of your day, while others are starting their day out. So thanks a lot, everybody. Appreciate you joining this morning, and hopefully see you again in next month's meeting.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.